Previously, we shared about the traps in the process of self-awareness. From this lecture onwards, I will lead you to fight back and use the psychological ability to distort reality to overcome these traps. In this lecture, I will share with you how our sense of control over life affects our physical and mental health. Why do the wealthy love to work so much? Bill Gates, now 63 years old, became the world's richest man at the age of 40 in 1995. He still serves as the chairman of Microsoft and was elected as a foreign academician of the Chinese Academy of Engineering in 2017. The wealth they have accumulated far exceeds what they can spend. So why don't they retire from their busy work and enjoy a leisurely life? You could say they love their work and pursue the value of life. But people like them are not few in number. In politics, business, and academia, many high-ranking people are unwilling to retire and are even willing to work until their last moment without pay. Why is that? A famous experiment in the history of psychology provides a good answer to this question. Longevity comes from a sense of control. Harvard University psychology professor Lang visited a nursing home for end-of-life care and visited the elderly who were on their last journey. At the end of the visit, the psychologist gave each elderly person a potted plant. In this study, he randomly divided the elderly into two groups. The researchers told one group of elderly people, "We're leaving, and this potted plant is for you. But you don't have to take care of it. Our nurses will water it every day, and you just need to enjoy it." They told the other group of elderly people, "We're leaving, and this potted plant is for you. But you need to water it. If you don't water it, the plant will die." In other words, for the first group of elderly people, the life or death of the potted plant was determined by the nurse. For the second group of elderly people, the life or death of the potted plant was determined by themselves, just a subtle difference. 1 year later, the psychologist returned to the nursing home for end-of-life care to see how many elderly people had passed away. He found that the group of elderly people who had the nurses take care of the potted plants had a death rate of 30%, which was no different from those who did not receive a potted plant. Indeed, you cannot expect a potted plant to make people live longer. However, the miracle happened in the group of elderly people who could control the life and death of the potted plants. The death rate of this group of elderly people decreased from 30% to 15%, a decrease of half. When this result was published, many people expressed disbelief. How could such a trivial and meaningless thing as controlling the life and death of a potted plant have such a big impact? It can. Later, this result was repeatedly verified in experiments conducted in different countries, societies, and races. Although we do not know the specific motivation for Bill Gates and Li Ka-shing to continue working, we know that if they maintain a sense of control over their careers, it is beneficial for their longevity. When we talk about longevity, biologists will say it's due to longevity genes, doctors will say it's due to advances in medical technology, and nutritionists will say it's due to a balanced diet, not smoking, and drinking less, and so on. But none of these factors are as strong as the role of a sense of control. This is because our lives are a process of pursuing control, gaining control, and eventually losing control. The theme of life is the pursuit of a sense of control. The word control runs through our entire lives. When you were born, your parents decided when you would eat, sleep, and what clothes you would wear. At this time, you had no sense of control. At the age of 2, you liked to throw things on the ground. This was not because you were clumsy, but because you began to realize that your actions could change the world. In other words, you began to have control over the world. When you were a little older, your parents really started to worry, so they gave this period a special name: adolescence. If your parents asked you to go east, you had to go west. It's not that you wanted what was in the west, you just wanted to rebel. You wanted to declare, "You can't control my behavior or my thoughts anymore. From today on, I am an independent person, and I control my behavior and thoughts." And those middle-aged and elderly men who are scheming, they seize the desire of young people to control and make them their tools, even cannon fodder. Steve Jobs said, "Change the world." China's Steve Jobs said, "Idealism and sentiment." But in fact, you are still a college student relying on your parents for support. How can you save the people of Asia and Africa who are in dire straits? This fictitious sense of control quickly collapses in the face of work. When you arrive at your workplace, you realize that you are nothing and can only start from the bottom, serving tea and water to older and more experienced people. At this point, you truly understand that the so-called sense of control needs to be gained bit by bit. So, you start working hard, studying seriously, and gradually become a team leader, project manager, department head, company president, and so on. The more people you lead, the more resources you control, and the stronger your sense of control becomes. Until one day, you retire, and you go from controlling everything to being controlled by a nurse. Life irreversibly enters a low point and eventually ends. The sense of control is something we can control ourselves. In fact, our sense of control does not need to be borrowed from external objects. Because the core of a sense of control is a belief in oneself, a respect for oneself, which is the self-confidence and self-esteem that I will talk about later in this module.